Hello, you guys. Welcome back to It's Abundance of Podcast. I'm your host, Addie, and I'm so glad that you're here joining me for a brand new episode. And I'm excited for today's episode because if you haven't been following along, then you don't know. But we have been doing a little series here on the podcast, just about like eating disorders and just body image, but like I don't know, just from like a different lens. If you have been following me for a while or even for like any amount of time, then you probably know that a big part of my story is having an eating disorder, and that's kind of why I started this in the first place. And I talk a lot about my story with anorexia, but I don't know, something was stirred in me a few weeks ago that I was just like, I just really want to talk about this. And I've been kind of like throughout these last few weeks, I've been kind of like, to be completely honest, wrestling with like this imposter syndrome of like, who am I? Like, what am I doing here talking about these things? Because I'm not a doctor. I didn't go to school for this. All I have is the experience with an eating disorder, and that's pretty much it, and Jesus. So, me coming on here is very, like, take it with a grain of salt. Like, obviously, I don't have all the answers, and I don't even know that they're always the right answers. Like, I can sit here and I can tell you my story and what I went through, but I'm not here to tell you how to eat, how to exercise, how not to, or just any of that sort. I've learned a lot. And I'm still learning. Like, my sister and I were even talking the other day about fasting, and there's just like so many different views on fasting and dieting and all those things. So I know that on a lot of episodes I talk about how fasting is stupid, or that like keto is stupid and all of these things, but I want to clarify that it doesn't work for me. It was something that was damaging to me, and I saw how it damages other people too, but that's not everyone. So I just want to clear that up. Like, it's not end all be all like Addie's way or the highway. But I'm just coming at this with a perspective of a girl that spent years trying to be smaller through dieting and overexercise. So anyway, today I'm actually so thankful, but I feel like the Lord it's just crazy how much he knows us. Like, he knows us more than we know ourselves. So like I said, these last few weeks I've been just kind of like incapable or inadequate to talk about these things, and just feeling like I don't have enough experience or enough knowledge. And I was reading an article and I was like, oh my goodness, this is so powerful. And I'm just going to read it on the podcast. So that's what I want to do today. Before you click off and you're like, I'm bored, I don't want to listen to an article, it is really powerful, and I would just encourage you to listen to it, and we're just going to talk about it. So I'm so glad that you're here, and let's just dive in. How are you guys, actually? I'm trying to think about some life updates for me. I'm hoping to be doing some traveling this summer. That's the goal anyway. I don't have anything like booked for sure. I am going back to Florida, which I'm excited for. I get to spend a few days down there by myself before my parents come, and I'm just gonna enjoy life. Maybe I'll post some stuff on the stories. I've been doing so much content for other people, for my 9 to 5, and then for this, and it's exhausting. Like, I'll be honest, like, I'm literally exhausted from it, but I also love it at the same time. So, like, if you have any tips for how to overcome that, or like what to even do. I also, you guys, okay, I'm kind of all over the place, but I also have an opportunity to be going to school for ministry, and it would be all online, and I don't know if I'm going to do it. So that's just something I'm praying about. Yeah, I have no other details than that. So those are just like a few little life updates. If you guys are like interested in my life, I would love to answer questions. Oh, also something I wanted to do before I read, actually maybe I'll do this afterwards. I did ask on my story about hot takes, and I might do this next episode, or maybe we'll just do like a part 2 to it. I'm going to read them at the end of this episode, because I was originally going to do that, but now I'm going to make that next week's episode. Anyway, you guys don't care about that. Let's just dive in. So this is an article. It's called The Culture Obsessed with Food, and it is by Douglas Kramer. It's just so good. You guys, you're just going to love it. I enjoy good food. And our Orthodox Christian faith is a sacramental faith, a faith which teaches us that the earthly joys of this world, including good food, are gifts from God, And certainly our ancestors, whatever one's heritage, have known deprivation and have prayed that their children and grandchildren and great-grandchildren would know peace and prosperity and not go hungry. But brothers and sisters, we all know that as people, as a culture, as Americans, our relationship with food has become disordered. Supersize has entered our vocabulary. Public health officials warn about our growing obesity epidemic. 80% of Americans over 25 are overweight, and obesity-related illnesses like type 2 diabetes are out of control. Our disordered relationship with food can be seen just as clearly as the other end of the spectrum. The diet and weight loss industry is booming. Desperately underweight models and actresses stare out at us from the grocery store and magazine racks. We are a culture that is obsessed with food, and this obsession is literally killing us. Yet we don't want to take responsibility for our problem. And as people, we're like the two young women who a couple years ago sued McDonald's because eating there all the time made them fat. But the church teaches us that there is a better way, a healthier way, a saner way. We can learn to bring our relationship with food into balance. And in the process, we can bring healing to our relationship to not just food, but to other parts of our earthly lives. How we spend our money, how we spend our time, how we care for our loved ones. The fasting days and seasons of the church are there to teach us how. We might look at the parable of the publican and the Pharisee. In this parable, we see two extremes, one unbalanced and ultimately leading to death, and the other one sensible, healthy, and ultimately leading to path of life. In this parable, Jesus tells of two men who went to the temple to pray, a Pharisee, one of the spiritual leaders of Israel, and a publican, a tax collector. What does the Pharisee pray? He prays, God, I thank you that I'm not like the other men, extortioners, unjust, adulterers, or even as this tax collector. I fast twice a week. I give tithes of all that I possess. The Pharisee is full of pride. He is so certain of himself, it never occurs to him that he might need help, that he might need healing, that he is like the overweight diabetic who cannot see that he has a health problem and heads out every morning for the donut shop, or the 80-pound teenager who just knows she needs to lose another 5 pounds. The way of pride is the way of death. When we are overly certain of ourselves to the point of delusion, we can even make gestures towards health that do not really help. It is good that the Pharisee gives tithes. It is good that he fasts, but while the scriptures do not tell us, I think the Pharisee was probably the kind of man who fasted twice a week, but was a glutton the other 5. In contrast, Jesus tells us about the publican. What does the publican pray? He prays, God, be merciful to me, a sinner. It is a simple prayer, a shorter prayer, and as Jesus teaches, a humble prayer. The way of humility is the way of life. When we are humble, we can acknowledge our faults. We can come before God and ask for help and for healing. We can see how far short of our potential we have fallen. In keeping our eyes on God, we can lift ourselves up and begin to make the changes we need to make. If the way of the Pharisee is the way of glutton oblivious to his own declining health, the way of the publican is the way of an athlete. We must choose to be spiritual athletes, to recognize our fallings and our need for healing, not so that we will despair, but so that we can start getting in shape. There are 3 practical things that we can do to change our relationship with food. First, we can draw up a realistic plan and stick with it. All of us struggle and will falter, but when we falter, we should plan to get back on track as soon as possible. This is true perseverance. Second, we can change our relationship with food by changing the place that it holds in our lives. The disorder in our eating is not just about what we eat, but how we eat. We need to slow down. How many of us eat on the run, in our cars, in front of the television, in front of the computer? How often do we eat and then realize that we did not even taste what we were eating? How can we be truly grateful for our food when we eat like this? A pastor told this story of how when his son was young, they used to go to lunch together. One day his son told him, "Dad, I think that every time we eat, it's a blow against the devil. Don't eat like we are putting gas in our cars. Eat more simply, slowly, and make it an occasion to converse and enjoy company of others. Turn off the TV and make a meal with your family. Thank God, sit with each other, and share in the joy of companionship and the taste of the food. Then go beyond even this. Find someone in the parish who does not have family to eat and invite them over for a meal. Third, we should remember every day that our fasting discipline is about much more than food. It is about God. As mentioned, our faith is a sacramental faith. The earthly bounty of this world is not evil. It is a gift from God, and we should partake of it in gratitude. The problem is that we do not remember that God must come first. We forget that our first need, our first hunger is for God. We use things, including food, to try to fill a God-shaped hole in our lives. So we should make our fasting discipline an opportunity to turn towards God. We should not go about with the sense that we are denying ourselves something. Instead, we should feel that we are giving something, giving ourselves God. The whole purpose of fasting, of spiritual athleticism, is to bring ourselves back to God, to bring our attention back to where it belongs. Stop obsessing about food, fast, and draw closer to God. Stop obsessing about money, draw closer to God. Stop obsessing about time, go to church for worship, and draw closer to God. Jesus said, "I am the living bread which came down from heaven. If anyone eats of this bread, he will live forever. And the bread that I shall give is my flesh, which I shall give for the life of the world. Most assuredly, I say to you, unless you eat the flesh of the Son of Man and drink his blood, you have no life in you. Whoever eats my flesh and drinks my blood has eternal life, and I will raise him up at the last day. For my flesh is food indeed, and my blood is drink indeed. He who eats my flesh and drinks my blood abides in me, and I in him." Like, if that doesn't, like, I can't even, there's so much to unpack in there. And I think the thing that stands out to me, number one, is that we're trying to fill a God-shaped hole in our hearts with obsessing over food. And I've said this before, but we have almost completely removed it as a society. We've removed God from these issues in our lives, and it's outside of food. It's outside of our struggle with dieting and stuff. But I want to hone in on that because, again, like, that's my story. We've made idols of ourselves, so much so that we've blamed God as being an absent father. Our world has made such an idol of food and of our own bodies that, yes, of course diet culture has an influence on us. Of course it has a grip on us. Of course it makes you squirm in your seat when you see the scale rise. Of course you feel guilty when you overeat, or you don't hit your macros, or you feel bloated and you feel ugly, or your clothes don't fit right. Of course you feel that way because our world isn't looking to God, isn't going to God. Stop obsessing about food and draw closer to God. One of the hardest things for me being on social media, and especially lately, like I said in last week's episode, that I just feel like the enemy is after me and after such a vulnerable part of my heart. And I'm just filled with, right now I feel so filled with conviction that, like, I am just spending so much time on social media and not even necessarily comparing, but just consuming. And then I know that results in comparison. But, like, the content that I am consuming right now is, like, that diet culture that I've talked about, and it's this, like, people being so small and pushing being the smallest you can be, and that being healthy, and, like, and then there's that other side of, like, the obesity and having self-love in the midst of being at an unhealthy weight. And your brain is just mush, or mine is at least mush, because you're trying to figure out where you fall in that and then determine your worth from there. And at some point, like, I just stopped trusting my own hunger cues and allowed everyone else around me to kind of dictate when I was allowed to be hungry, because that would determine my worth. I remember growing up when people would say, like, oh, are you hungry or are you just bored? And again, like, these aren't bad things to say, but it's like, it's like already instilled in us at such a young age that maybe we shouldn't trust our body. The very good body that was designed in the garden. Like, you guys, if we go back to Genesis, like, God didn't make our bodies to not know how to feed itself, how to honor itself, how to glorify Him in the process, how to trust the hunger cues, how to respect it, how to know when to go and when to stop with things. I used to eat based on rules, like I talked about last week, like timing rules, rather than just like listening to whether or not I was hungry. I started thinking that my body was wrong, or that there's something wrong with it and needed fixing. Diet culture has trained us to rely on the outside voices. And it's not even just diet culture, but our world, the enemy, like from a very young age. I think we have been just told to listen to these other people, like on TikTok and influencers, but also our parents and the people in our homes and the people around us. We've been trained to believe that our body is the least trustworthy voice in the room. But back in Genesis 1:27, God created the body, He called it good, and then He provided food for it. The point is that your body was not created wrong or broken or out of place. And the hunger was never a mistake. Food was given. It wasn't ever feared either. There was no confusion around food. There was only a provision, and it was God's good provision. Okay, enough of that. Let's just get into some of your questions or your hot takes I asked on Instagram, and I'm just going to read a few of them. I didn't get a ton. Next week, we're going to do like a longer episode where I read like more common ones from like just people in general. But this is all from you guys, which I thought was just kind of fun. And I don't know, I'm just going to give you my take on them. Again, these are completely my opinion, so take them with a grain of salt, because I am not a doctor. I am barely experienced in this. I just suffered from an eating disorder for a few years. That is my credentials, and that's it. Okay. Oh, wow. I actually got a lot more than I thought. Okay, very first one. Less cardio when recovering. Weightlifting helps with bone strength, confidence, and motivation. Okay, yes. Yeah. So my question on my story was, I'm recording another episode for our little series later this week. I want to know, what are your controversial diet/exercise takes? So that's one of them. I feel like that's not super controversial, but yeah, when we are recovering from eating disorders, it's really important, honestly, for me. Everyone else is very different, but for me, I had to just like stop exercising altogether. I don't think I did like any workouts for probably 2 years, and then reintroducing it was like really hard and weird, very odd. I felt like people were like judging me or thinking that I was not actually recovering if I was going to start working out again, but I ended up like loving it and just being able to, I think the time away helped me develop a better relationship with working out and stuff. So, but yeah, less cardio for sure. Cardio burns a lot of calories, which is energy. And when you're in recovery, you're trying to replenish that energy that you had just lost. So it is very important that you lessen that. Weightlifting helps with bone strength, confidence, and motivation. Yes, I agree. But for some, I think it would be good to just cut it out altogether, especially because it's that your brain could be different than mine, but what the enemy likes to do is use something that can be good and turn it around to hurt you and to harm you. And I think for me, if I were to keep exercising and say like, oh, well, I can weightlift because it helps with bone strength, then that's me like compensating and being like, what's the word? Like negotiating with myself. Like, I can do this. Like, I'll eat more as long as I can keep weightlifting. And that just like is just not good. So cutting it out altogether was what I needed to do. But again, I think everyone is different. Okay, the next one. It doesn't matter if you eat healthy, if you double your intake on food. So I think, I don't really know what they're saying here. I think in terms of like weight loss and weight gain, I think this gets so hard as somebody that has recovered from it, because I think that we are called to eat biblically, and that I think whole foods are really important, and that being just things from the earth, things that are in the Bible, and Americans have a lot of processed things and a lot of harmful things. But as somebody that maybe is in recovery, like for me, like I can't label things as good and bad, because there are things that are going to help us. There are things that are going to harm us if we have too many of them. But anything, I think what they're saying here is that any amount of food is that amount of food. So like 100 calories here versus 100 calories there is 100 calories. But yes, your body does use things differently though. Okay, moving on. Next one, jogs at the crack of dawn. I don't usually go on jogs, I go on walks. That's my preferred thing. I love watching a sunrise. It is amazing. This is interesting. Somebody said processed food is literally a myth. A potato is processed the second you pull it out of the ground. Wash it and cut it. All processes. I think that there is such thing as processed food, which is the things like that go through factories, right? Like our packaged goods. So I think a potato is a vegetable. It's a starch, something that's grown in the earth. Some of it can be processed, which would be like French fries or potato chips. Those are versions of processed. I think that, I disagree with that. Okay, moving on. Somebody said, she says that you don't need to. You don't need to bulk or cut if you lift weights. And I agree. I think that lifting weights can just be a healthy way of moving your body and honoring it. So he said, I just eat when I'm hungry and hope for the best. I love that. I think that is great. I think that's what we are called to do. Beautifully said. Okay, next week I'm going to do more, but I don't know. I hope you guys really enjoyed that article or that little blog. I just felt really moved by it and just really felt like it wrapped up all of my crazy thoughts into just a handful of paragraphs, and it just felt so just good to read. It felt like I was reading my own thought. It was just great. So I'm just praying that sits with you, that resonates with you this week. And I would love to carry on the conversation. What else are you guys struggling with? What else are we seeing right now? What else do we need to call out? Next week, we'll do a little bit more of a lighthearted episode where we just kind of talk about all of the diet culture things and hot takes that the world has, and we'll talk about them. All right, I love you guys. I hope you enjoyed this episode, and I will see you next week. Hey friend, I just want to take a moment to invite you to something special. If you love the content on here and you love the depth that we go to, but you want something even deeper, something that you can take into your everyday, maybe it's actionable resources or questions to ask yourself throughout the week, or you just want something to help you stay accountable, I have something just for you. I want to invite you to join our email list. By signing up, you're going to get access to our weekly newsletters, packed with extra content to go deeper in each week's episode. Plus, you're going to be the first to hear about new launches, exclusive updates, and giveaways. You don't want to miss out on these valuable resources and the community that we're building over there. So if you're ready to dive deeper and be a part of all the amazing things, head over to theabundantco.net and sign up today. It's completely free and a great way to just stay connected. Again, that's www.theabundantco.net, or sign up in the link in the description. I cannot wait to have you join us.